All right, I am back with, I guess this isn't a Destiny 2 video per se, but it is a Bungie video, a Bungie drama video, I guess. Big story today. Fired game director of Marathon and longtime Bungie employee Chris Barrett has filed a lawsuit against Bungie over him being fired, which he claims was a way to avoid a $45 million payment that he was owed. And he's seeking a lot of damages, and there are a lot of claims in his lawsuit that I want to go through. The way this has been rolled out is certainly interesting. As me being someone in this industry, it's like an actual PR campaign in that I was sent a PR email being like, hey, I don't know if you saw this, but Chris Barrett is suing Bungie, and then it like lays out the case and it attaches a PDF of the filing. I thought about reading the whole filing, but it's very long, and I'd rather read this VentureBeat GamesBeat article instead, which sort of condenses it and has some interesting information in it. This article is also part of the PR campaign. How this works is you can be like as a writer, you can be like approached by someone's representation, be like, oh, this lawsuit's about to be filed. Like, would you like the exclusive story from so-and-so to like get their side out there? And like, you know, you can say no, but we have a article here that has been published about that sort of in conjunction with the rollout of this lawsuit. Okay, so to recap where we were here, a lot of this is based on this Bloomberg report from Jason Schreier about why Barrett was fired. And the highlight here is, which is cited in Barrett's own lawsuit, is what it claims where, let me start by saying, I am not a lawyer. I am not making any legal judgments here. I am just relaying what is said and have some thoughts. Okay, so this is from the Bloomberg article. Behind the scenes, Barrett was terminated following an internal investigation in which at least 8 female employees raised complaints earlier this year that he had behaved inappropriately toward them. According to 8 people, including multiple women who reported Barrett, as well as other Bungie employees who were either involved in the investigation or spoke to the women involved. The people asked not to be named, discussing private information. The investigation found that Barrett called lower-level female employees attractive and asked them to play Truth or Dare, and made references to his wealth and power within the studio, suggesting he could help advance their careers, according to 2 people familiar with the case. So, and then his statement at the time was, I feel I have always conducted myself with integrity and been respectful and supportive of my colleagues, many of whom I consider my closest friends. I never understood my communications to be unwanted and would have never thought they could possibly have made anyone feel uncomfortable. If anyone ever felt that way about their interaction with me, I am truly sorry. Well, you know, this went beyond being truly sorry and into this big lawsuit here. So let's just go through it here. This is by Dean Takahashi for GamesBeat. Chris Barrett was one of the prominent developers who was fired in March 2024 in the wake of the Me Too scandals that hit the game industry. This is pretty far after the big Me Too era, but yes, same principle, I guess. But Barrett, a game artist, filed a lawsuit today against his former employers, Sony Interactive Entertainment and Bungie, alleging they fired him to avoid giving him a $45 million payment he said he was entitled to. We have asked Sony Bungie for comments. They have apparently not given comments. What I've heard behind the scenes is people just sort of like sighing really loudly. I'm not in touch with like Bungie leadership or like lawyers, but people are like, oh God, please, another thing. Come on. Barrett's lawsuit said the defendants deliberately destroyed Barrett's reputation by falsely and publicly insinuating they had investigated Barrett and, quote, found he had engaged in sexual misconduct. Defendants did not care that none of it was true. They had blatant motivations for their brazen scheme. And that was the payout he said he was entitled to under his employment agreement. In the actual lawsuit, a bunch of like coverage of this is cited, including like Reddit threads and tweets saying like, oh, he's a sexual pest or whatever. And then like they cited the Bloomberg report. They cited my article about this saying that, you know, I interpreted that, you know, I took away that he was fired for sexual misconduct. They're not like criticizing me. It's just, they're saying that that was the sense that Bungie and Bloomberg had conveyed through this report, which they think is bad. Okay. The lawsuit went on to say the companies were motivated by a need to shift blame for and deflect attention away from their massive business failures. And to achieve those corporate objectives, they were willing to sacrifice Barrett. Okay, I mean, that was probably a story for like a week or two, but I certainly do not think it has offset the issues surrounding Bungie. Well, that sounds despicable. That's interesting editorializing there. Well, that sounds despicable. Barrett was accused of crossing the line between professional and personal behavior in the course of its journalistic investigation of the Me Too scandal. I don't know why they keep calling it that. It's okay. Bloomberg interviewed 8 people, including multiple women who reported Barrett, as well as other Bungie employees who were either involved in the investigation or spoke to the women involved. A long career in ruin. Barrett started his career in the video game industry by creating maps and levels for the game Myth for free as a fan at night after working his day job in New York, the lawsuit said. Bungie, the maker of Myth, recruited Barrett, and for the next 25 years, Bungie and Barrett had a remarkable ride. The suit said Barrett drove the artistic development of some of the world's legendary video game franchises, including Halo and Destiny, the latter of which has been nominated for Best Ongoing Game at the 2024 Game Awards. It hasn't. I just wrote a thing about how it was not nominated. I think it was nominated last year, but okay. Acquired a valuable equity interest in Bungie and became the driving force and lead designer for Bungie's most important new gaming project, Marathon. Okay, so this is the key here, is that he had equity in Bungie, which is like how you get these insane payout numbers of like 45 million and stuff like that. So he had equity in Bungie. They sold to Sony for 3.6 billion. You get where this is going. Okay. That ride ended abruptly in 2024 when Sony, which had acquired Bungie for 3.6 billion in 22, acting in concert with Bungie, removed Barrett from his position in charge of developing Marathon, then baselessly fired him, allegedly for cause, following a supposed investigation, the lawsuit said. So it wasn't really clear how involved Sony was in this, but it seems they were pretty involved, and it seems like it's going to be them dealing with a lot of the legalities of this in court. As I just tweeted, you'll recall that Bungie fired its general counsel, Don McGowan, who had won a pretty significant number of higher profile lawsuits for them. No one really quite understands that decision, but here we are. Barrett alleges he was told about an investigation into his behavior when he was on a mental health leave. He alleges he attended the interview meeting with, a lot of quotes here, with Sony's legal department, but was not advised to bring legal counsel. Typo. I make lots of typos, no judgment. He said he was never shown any of the text messages. Barrett was never asked whether he had ever engaged in inappropriate sexual conduct, whether he ever sent inappropriate sexual or pornographic materials to a coworker, or whether he ever retaliated against a coworker for rebuffing his advances or discriminating against a female colleague on the basis of her sex. Barrett was not asked those questions because Barrett did not engage in and has not been accused of any such conduct. That is true. So like you'll see what this is saying here. Like, he has not been accused of these things, which was not in the initial report. He did not retaliate against a coworker for rebuffing his advances, though this said he called lower-level female employees attractive, asked them to play Truth or Dare, and made references to his wealth and power, suggesting he could help them advance their careers. If they said no or whatever, there's no report that he retaliated. It's that this behavior was, quote, inappropriate, and they were complaining about it. So like, these two things can kind of go together. The question is if he was fired for those reasons or Bungie was using that as a pretext, which this is what the lawsuit says. And also multiple things can be true, which I will get to eventually here. Less than 3 weeks after his interview, Barrett was notified via Microsoft Teams that he is engaged in unspecified gross misconduct and would be terminated for cause. Defendants refused to explain further and told him he had nothing he would say would make a difference, despite never giving him a chance to engage with the allegations in the first place, the lawsuit said. This cause was a vague violation of Bungie's harassment policy, the lawsuit said. Then they compiled the Machiavellian trifecta by providing wildly misleading statements to Bloomberg designed to deflect blame for Sony's poorly performing $3.6 billion acquisition of Bungie and delays in video game production by casting shade on Barrett for his role in Marathon. Shift blame for their own public Me Too problems by falsely insinuating the accusations of severe misconduct had been directed at Barrett when they had not, the lawsuit said. Again, that's not what that said. Okay. The lawsuit also said Sony's $3.6 billion acquisition of Bungie has been a disaster. It said Bungie has struggled to meet financial targets, has fallen behind on deadlines, and Marathon, a centerpiece of the transaction, has been the subject of intense public criticism. I guess that's true to a certain extent. By terminating Barrett for cause, defendants could save $45 million and pin the Marathon issues on Barrett in one fell swoop. I don't know if people were like saying that like the Marathon issues are on Barrett specifically. Like, we weren't even told the game had a new game director for like 9 months after this, which is kind of shady Bungie behavior. But yeah, I don't know. I think people have many concerns about Marathon, and Barrett being booted out is not really top of the list. But yeah, Bungie's struggles should not have been a surprise. The lawsuit continued. Before the Sony acquisition, Bungie was in a difficult financial position. Destiny, the video game franchise responsible for the majority of Bungie's revenues, was not performing as well as Bungie had hoped. That's true. I reported on this. Yet Bungie was able to strike a deal with Sony that enabled Bungie management to retain certain control post-acquisition. When Bungie thereafter underdelivered, with Marathon delayed and Bungie senior leadership in disarray, and with Sony looking to hold Bungie leadership accountable, Bungie offered Barrett, who had always been on the creative side and never active in business management, as a sacrifice, the lawsuit said. Yikes. Okay. The lawsuit said prior to Barrett's termination, Bungie faced considerable public accusations of misconduct toward women. That is true. There were no like real specifics in some of those past reports, but yes, there was, bad work culture reports before this. Firing Barrett allowed defendants to falsely pin those issues on Barrett and create a narrative they were taking harassment issues seriously. After all, if they would fire a creator of their two main franchises, they could fire anyone. Never mind that Barrett had not engaged or been accused of the misconduct at issue, much less any misconduct, the lawsuit said. The lawsuit claimed that Barrett had been harmed financially, physically, and emotionally. He has been the subject of harassment and public ridicule, has lost friends and professional opportunities, he has seen relationships with family strained. His lifelong dream of launching his own video game company, one within reach for a respected designer, multiple legendary games, has been crushed, the lawsuit said. Barrett joined Bungie in 1999 after drawing attention as a myth modder. He was credited for work on Myth 2. In those early days, Barrett noticed through the lawsuit, colorful language and off-color jokes were common. Employees frequently and openly referred to things as gay. Sexual mom jokes and racist jokes were commonplace. Nudity was not prohibited. Bungie personnel engaged in moonings in the office where employees would pull their pants down and display their buttocks, a practice that continued to some degree over the years. That is 99, apparently. Not that was good back then, but it is certainly not uncommon. I'm sure this is all true for a mostly male video game company in 1999. It sounds like high school / college in that era, if that's not also true now. Barrett went to work on Halo, which drew Microsoft's attention, leading to the acquisition of Bungie. He also had prominent roles later, like the lead environment artist of Halo 2. He received a $200,000 bonus for his role on Halo 3. Then Bungie began plans to spin out of Microsoft. In that deal, Barrett received, starting on October 1st, 2007, Barrett was to receive founder shares equivalent to 2.5% of the newly spun off Bungie. On December 2010, he signed an agreement with Bungie. It was granted 336,000 shares of Series B2 preferred stock and 48,000 shares of common stock. All these shares were to vest over the following decade and would automatically vest upon a change of control, and any unvested shares would be forfeited if Barrett left Bungie voluntarily, which provided significant incentive for Barrett to stay at Bungie. Side note, if you're wondering why certain people at Bungie are still there, this may clue you in as to one of the reasons that may be the case. Bungie made Barrett responsible for the creative and art design of Bungie's next franchise, later named Destiny. Barrett was named co-creator of Destiny alongside Bungie co-founder Jason Jones. Was he really? Destiny released in 2014, and it was a big hit. It reaped revenues for years to come as a live service game. When Destiny 2 was delayed, Barrett was assigned to do a new expansion for Destiny, and he did it on time and under budget. He then helped with Destiny 2, which shipped in 2017. Post-launch, he became the Destiny 2 game director in charge of live services, and his pay was increased to $240K. In December 2021, IGN dropped a bombshell article about Me Too problems around sexual harassment at Bungie. Without referring to senior managers by name, the story described a range of bad behavior as well as poor work conditions, such as unpaid crunch time, and that Bungie leadership protected these managers. Bungie CEO Pete Parsons responded to the allegations, saying the company had taken various initiatives to improve behavior and working conditions. Okay, here we go. Now Barrett's going shotgun spray here on some other people. While denying any role in such behavior, Barrett alleged in the lawsuit that he witnessed a very senior Bungie executive texting him and others sexually suggestive material, including lewd photographs, texts about his sex life, including graphic depictions of particular sex acts, and texts concerning the appearance of women working for Bungie. The lawsuit alleged the same senior Bungie executive frequently showed up for work drunk, attended group meetings while clearly intoxicated, and engaged in sexual conduct at Bungie-sponsored events. And it said one of Bungie's founding members made frequent sexist and racist comments in group settings. For example, in a leadership meeting, he joked that a woman's place is barefoot and pregnant, or words to that effect. Barrett reprimanded him over email, but he faced no consequences, the lawsuit alleged. During an interview, a potential hire told Barrett that Bungie should name a Destiny faction the Rotten Cunt. Christ. Never thought I'd say that on YouTube video. Barrett reported the comment to the group evaluating the candidate and insisted Bungie not hire him. Leadership still hired the candidate. The lawsuit said a female office administrator shared explicit stories about her sexual exploits, and at least one Bungie employee frequently exposed himself in the office, including by pulling down his pants in the middle of the office and pressing his exposed buttocks against glass overlooking the entire studio. I guess not much has changed since 1999. Despite the #MeToo problems, Sony chose to go ahead with the acquisition of Bungie. The lawsuit alleged in 2022, Barrett signed an agreement that he would have paid him in the $45 million range. In January of 2022, Sony announced the $3.6 billion acquisition of Bungie. The deal closed in July of 2022. He got a $1.8 million payment, but was due $45.6 million. Barrett's lawsuits claim that Bungie lost its autonomy because the division underperformed Sony's expectations on performance metrics and financial targets. In May 2023, Barrett publicly revealed as the game director on Marathon. In October 2023, Bungie had a mass layoff around 100 people. Cost-cutting ensued, and games such as Marathon were delayed. By February 2025, Sony Games head Jim Ryan announced 8% of Sony's game group would be laid off. That was 900 people. Barrett moved to Florida and while there was replaced by Joe Ziegler as game director of Marathon and was blamed for Marathon's delays. The lawsuit alleged Barrett was renamed franchise game director. In effect, he was moved upstairs with nothing to manage, while Barrett's manager allegedly belittled him publicly. Barrett then filed for mental health leave. Then the, quote, investigation began. Weeks later, Barrett was fired. After his termination in July 2024, 155 more people at Bungie were absorbed into Sony, and 220 more Bungie jobs were eliminated. That is the end. Okay. So, well, this is a mess. I'm not terribly surprised this happened, as I knew, Barrett probably had a good stake in Bungie after the Sony deal, and if you're fired for misconduct, you probably do not get access to that. What he's saying is that Bungie used, some measure of, quote, misconduct as a pretext to fire him so he would not get this large amount of money he's owed. I read somewhere he's trying to get $200 million in damages or something. I'm not 100% sure that's true, but at the very least, $45 million. And the other side is that these complaints happened. Bungie looked into them. Bungie thought they were inappropriate and in violation of whatever, and they fired him for that. Bungie leadership is a mess. As I think we know, Barrett is not the only member of Bungie leadership that has some measure of problems or another. I have been hearing for a very long time that senior Bungie leadership, without naming names, has many similar issues, and it does not surprise me, per se, that this section about other Bungie people in leadership or employees were also engaging in inappropriate behavior. I guess he's relaying this, being like, I didn't do this, but all these other people are doing this stuff, and it's bad. These are the worst accusations I've seen. There was that IGN report about a bad work environment and stuff. And then there's the Barrett report where he's making women feel uncomfortable and saying inappropriate things. This is he's texting lewd photographs and showing up for work drunk and having sex with people at Bungie events and making founding members making racist comments. A woman's place is barefoot and this is worse than anything we've seen so far. Granted, he's not naming names, but it also implies like it is not impossible, certainly, that other things may come out about other executives. I would also not put it past Bungie to use a legitimate, complaint of misconduct as a way to be like, well, as a bonus, we can also not pay someone a bunch of money. That does not seem like something that is out of, would be out of thought, I guess, when something like this was unfolding. This is a lawsuit. There is no way to say what happened one way or another. There was no judgment rendered. I will believe the women that came forward and say that they felt inappropriate with, the way Barrett behaved. What they're saying up here, that like he didn't do any of the like the stuff they're saying he didn't do is not really what he's being accused of. Quote unquote sexual misconduct. You're sort of debating semantics there, but his position is that I guess he was painted as much more predatory or whatever than he says he was, and that in turn ruined his reputation when he didn't think these issues were as serious as they made it sound, or didn't happen at all, something like that. I don't know what's going to happen here. Clearly Barrett has a whole campaign for this with a PR agency and press contacts and all this stuff. So, he's already wealthy. Like he has the resources to take this on. That said, he will be going up against Bungie and, more importantly, Sony, who are not going to want to pay tens of millions of dollars in damages, certainly. And what happens in things like this is things come out in discovery. What also may happen, or may be likely to happen, is some sort of settlement where, he doesn't get the amount that he wants, but he gets some millions of dollar amount less than that. I don't know. Settlements can go any number of ways. All of this just serves to reinforce the narrative that Bungie's a mess. Bungie leadership in particular is a mess. I know very few people in Bungie's leadership team, whether past or present, that are, quote, viewed as the good ones. And most of those have left. And the people that remain may not be in that category. I do not know here what will come out in discovery on either side. I don't know if we will see anything like that surface, or, where things go from here. Stuff like this probably takes a long time to get fleshed out, but I don't know. It's a shitty situation that Bungie as a company, the rank and file of Bungie does not need right now, when there's already so much pressure on them to, fix Destiny, deliver Marathon, all this stuff, like amid tons and, hundreds of layoffs. The hits just keep coming here. And this is a senior leadership issue. It's a legal issue with Sony, all of this stuff. One interesting thing is, in the actual document, Barrett wants to be reinstated as director, kind of a Gina Carano Mandalorian move there. Again, that does not seem terribly likely in this circumstance, but not just money. I think his goal is to try to get his reputation back, and has to make Bungie and Sony say like, oh, this wasn't justified. Again, whether that is able to happen or not through a lawsuit like this remains to be seen, but you can see Barrett's argument, you can see the goals, you can see the other side of what was reported, and why he was let go according to the women that came forward. I don't know. We'll see what happens here, but it's not great either way you cut it, and this will take some time to resolve. I don't know what the end result will be, but it is certainly the last thing Bungie need, even if I'm not super shocked that it eventually came to this. I might dig through the actual lawsuit to see if there's anything else in there, but I don't know. This is exhausting. They can sort it out. It's, a bunch of people doing probably bad things, sort of fighting with each other, and hopefully Bungie can just put their heads down and ignore stuff like this. Anyway, I was going to do a video before this about the Frontiers document and then some of the TWAB and stuff, but that will have to wait. And it's time to watch the Game Awards in a couple hours, so I will be covering that. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.